Peace and love. So with the advent of the storm, that was the day of reckoning, the two main events with Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, and the results that came about of those fights. The next question is, I guess that many are pondering right now is the fight still worth seeing? Joshua Wilder. Oh my goodness, this is a tough one because the fight has been brewing for, I don't know, maybe 5 years, maybe 6. I don't know how many years, a long time. And now with such a unclimactic finish to what was supposed to be the setup of the biggest fight in boxing between these two men, having ended and resulted in such a unbelievable end. It's difficult to place it for me now emotionally as a fan, because I'm a 100% boxing fan and I love the sport and I support the sport. But I must say, at least at this particular moment, that I have no interest in seeing the fight. I gotta keep it a stack. It's just two completely different planes of existence for the two fighters. And from the last performances of the two, they're both operating on completely different levels. Anthony is sound in his precision, sound on his punches, sound on his generalship and overall ring IQ, and focused on the sweet science of destruction. And Deontay Wilder, from the observation received from his last performance, is just clueless and has no legs, no foundation, no tactics, no support from his corner, no game plan coming from his corner. It's just the complete antithesis of what Anthony Joshua and Ben Davidson are working with. Two completely different realms of being for the two. And at this point, I just don't think the meeting of the two in the ring would cause any real earth-shattering outcome. I don't see where those two energies, as polar as they are, will provide anything worthwhile, but that's just judging from the last two performances. Of course, things can change, but it's also contingent upon Deontay Wilder's ferocity and his desire to even want to be in the sport. Like, the question can't even be posed to me realistically at this particular time, because we're dealing with a man, as far as Deontay is concerned, we're dealing with a man's ability to and desire to want to exist in the ring, as a certified full-time, full-fledged boxer, fighter, warrior. That's in question. And it's a serious question. It's not even, at this point, even speaking about it sounds like more of a fantasy matchup than a realistic one, the way it may have been last week if we would have had this conversation. And now it seems more like a fantasy matchup, because we're dealing with a man whose spirit is not in the ring, possibly and potentially. I don't know. I really don't know. And I hear also on several platforms the debate about, his age, him being 38 and, maybe, too old now, that for the reason why what we saw in the display was so lackluster. But I don't think that's so much of the issue. I don't think that's the issue. Not that, his supply hasn't been affected as far as like his abilities due to age. That's a natural progression. But that really doesn't have anything to do with the desire. What really needs to be the focus here is the desire. And I don't know. I hear on several different platforms that I follow and from people that I admire, but that I strongly disagree with this point, kind of like the notion that, it's okay kind of for him to lose this fire because, he's made the money and stuff like that. And that's fine if he, were to announce retirement. Of course, yes, then we can look with that type of retrospective approach to it and say, okay, well, yes, he's made such money and he can go and do this or this, that, and enjoy the benefits of the labor that he's put in for all of these years. But that's not the conversation. He just had a fight on Saturday. And if that were the case, then why would he have risked his life to be in the ring? And if he made that foolish decision to do that this past Saturday, knowing that the flame is gone, then he better think twice about anything to come in the future. Because that is a risk to his health and a risk to the people that love him around him, for him to do such a thing when he is not prepared to be in battle mentally or physically, apparently, because what we saw was not somebody well trained. What we saw was somebody, it looked like a fish out of water or a horse that was just born that doesn't have any legs. Literally, he looked like Dan Bambi. I don't know. The fight has been so big to me personally for so many years and throughout the boxing community, so beloved a fight that it's difficult to put it down and say, well, this has no potential anymore. It's died. The seed is no good. The roots aren't taking. It's difficult to say that regarding these two beautiful men. We've waited so long and the heat between them has been so passionate and just, back and forth. Well, Joshua's not really so much that type of, given that type of output, but he certainly has expressed over the years the flame that he has, for wanting to make that fight happen. He said on several occasions, this is our era. We're two great men of our era. We're bound to meet. We have to meet. It wouldn't make sense to end our careers without having met in the ring, and exchange leather. It's just difficult. This conversation is difficult. And because I'm such a great fan of both men, I'd hate to see it not happen, but I also am being honest and realistic about my personal excitement for this fight. Now, after Deontay's lackluster performance, I think it's funny that over so many years, Deontay has called Joshua out as having been the staller, the person responsible for the non-progress of the fight, the lack of materialization of the fight being due to Joshua. And he said it in so many ways over the years. But I think it's funny that he fumbles the bag with a terrible performance. And nobody's talking about this because for whatever reason, the business may have been held off on DAZN's part, on Deontay's part over the years is one thing. Business has to be agreed upon between the two parties involved. It must do that. And sometimes that doesn't happen the first, second, or third try. And so there's a building between the agreement and the negotiations, the terms, the standards, a whole bunch of things go into this. And that's one thing, coming across such turbulence, but all the while the work is trying to be defined to become something. That's one thing. But it's another thing when you drop the ball and after you've signed a contract now, both parties are saying, listen, upon my win on this fight, you and I are next, without a doubt, hands down, signed, sealed, and delivered. We both have our names on this paper. And Deontay fumbles the ball, and now he still wants to, he's still taking a blameless position. Nobody's really talking about the climax that we've had as fans, watching these two men go back and forth and, the mentioning of each other in interviews, people asking about them in different interviews and all these conversations happening, and now it's in Deontay Wilder's hands for the reason why this has no materialization. It hasn't concretized because of Deontay Wilder. Now, we cannot speak of Joshua as the scapegoat now for the reason why, like many people have over the years, saying, oh, well, he's the reason, he's ducking, he's scared to zone, Eddie's protecting him, and all this other type of rhetoric that we've heard across the board from several platforms. It's funny how nobody is looking at the direct effect and cause of this fight not happening today because of one man, and that's Deontay Wilder, because he lost, because he did not perform in his last fight. The weight is on him. Okay? So who really got the out as far as Deontay Wilder's concerned? You know what I'm saying? It's completely Wilder. At this point, the trajectory was completely shifted because of his inability to meet the standard. And it's to be noted. It's to be noted completely. And all these platforms that have been spinning that rhetoric around for a lot of years are not, assuming that responsibility in the same posture as far as it comes to Deontay Wilder with placing it completely in his hands. You want to divert the shift and shift the attention off of the fact that this fight, the biggest fight in the heavyweight division of this era, is now a possibility to not happen. It's a possibility that is completely off the table now because of one man and one man alone. We can no longer turn to the left and look at Joshua and say, well, maybe Eddie's protecting his golden boy, or the other myriad excuses that have been thrown about. Now we got to look at Wilder as a boxing community and say, what are you doing? What have you not been doing? Are you still interested in the fire of a boxer's life? Are you still committed? Would you rather just be home and cuddle up next to your family watching TV? Either way is fine, but we are no longer going to have the excuse that the man to your left is ducking you. This is completely your fault that this fight is not happening now. And while the boxing world may potentially never get to see that fight, it's because of you, Deontay Wilder. And so with that said, I think it's the only way I would want to see that fight is if, we had a Wilder that was spirited, the way we know him, well trained. But real talk, I don't think that this Deontay Wilder can do anything with Anthony Joshua. It's a fact. If he couldn't get through Parker, what the fuck is he going to do with a Joshua who's on a mission, and who's long had a fire in his belly for you? I just don't know. I am definitely torn and conflicted. After the results of the last fight, the Day of Reckoning card. It's a lot of questions to be answered, and I think a lot of boxing fans, are spinning around and generating all sorts of dialogue surrounding this because it definitely begs to, strike up the dialogue in one's mind. Like, is this something that I could be invested in as a fan in seeing? Because, the way you look at you don't have no legs to stand on, quite literally. To be getting in front of some Anthony Joshua, he was looking like a demolition man in that ring. It's just, I want to see you at your best. This whole game is about the best fighting the best. I'm not a person who cares about so much losses and things like that. Somebody's bound to lose when two great people collide. It's to test one's strength. Iron sharpens iron, and you got to pass through that fire. And it's beautiful that that's the spectacle that we're all here to watch. We're all here to be a part of that and partake in that. And, the loser is no less a part of that story and that heat and that joy that we, the audience, get just because they've taken a loss. No, we could stand up and salute you and say, oh my God, that was a hell of a fight, man. Gee. Like the Hagler Hearns days, that nobody lost that fight to me because it's just that's one of my favorite fights of all time. The flame in that ring that they brought to each other was just unparalleled. We saw two great men going at it, putting it all on the line, and we won't get we won't get a fifth of that. Watching the Deontay Wilder that we saw in his last fight with Joseph Parker, it's just I want to see the fighters that I like and that I support at their best, and at this moment, it's not worth it. And I hate to say that because it's a fight that I have been, it's one of the only fights in boxing that mattered to me, and certainly the only heavyweight fight in all of boxing that ever mattered. Tyson and Usyk is blah, blah, it's like, that's more like a side fight. It's more like a lesser fight. It's not even really a heavyweight fight to me. It's never really been considered that for me. It's just like, oh, okay, well, they're fighting. It's never been one to get me running to the television and marking my calendar for. It's always been Joshua Wilder for me, always the heavyweight fight that mattered. And it just sucks that, I wish Deontay would have just really, really went hard. And if he lost, it would have just still been worth my while to say, fuck, damn, he lost. Okay, damn, but that was a hell of a fight. At least it would give, me as an onlooker, as a fan, as a supporter, some hopes to see them, because the flame is still there, and it still will always come down to the best of someone, the fire in someone up against the fire in another. But there was no fire in Wilder. And it's like, I wouldn't want to see him fight himself. I wouldn't want to see him shadow box, let alone get in a ring with someone with that type of lackluster approach. It's just, I don't know, difficult conversation, but we'll see what happens. If that fight is ever generated, if it's ever consummated, I don't know, but I guess we'll find out.